Hi, I'm Tim, welcome to the Restoration Couple. Today's video is all about scaffold boards and industrial looking furniture. We built this 6-piece set of furniture in just one day, so stick around and I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Right, so if you'd followed the barbecue fire pit series, we kind of had to get those table and benches to a point where they worked for the end sort of scene of that video. Now, what I wanted to do is just revisit those because I skimmed through it in that video, plus I also need to correct a few things. Now, we ran out of time to get the benches done how I actually wanted. We ended up using scaffold boards as they come, which are, I think, about 9 inches or 220 or something along those lines. So instead of just settling for these, which are probably okay, but bearing in mind the legs can only be as wide as the bench top really, it's a little bit top heavy and a little bit unstable for kids. So what I wanted to do is extend this bench top. So as a tester, I've taken another strip from, or I've basically halved another board, but it means that they'll all end up a decent size. I can get the legs on, everything will look a little bit more in proportion. Just done a quick line up on these. when I get my end of the board tight, which is a nice clean joint actually, it opens up the other end about 3mm. So before I start tackling it with a hand plane and messing around too much, I'm just going to see if a clamp will pull it in, because if it pulls it in, then we know we're not far off. So flush those up like that. Oh yeah, there's loads to give. We've ended it with a 300mm board, which I think is a decent bench. The nice thing is I can use this as one of the clamps. Let's bung this in first. Right, where is that biscuit jointer? Brand new in a box somewhere. Don't tell me Joe snuck it back to the shop for a refund. There it is. Alright, let's release the beast. Move it to there. Make our first board. We'll see how we do here. So the basics are you're marking up where your boards are going to align. Not critical in this one, but and then that line is what you line up on the plate. Got 4 of these to make before 11 o'clock. And if you haven't got one of these and you've got a router, you could use a router. That's what I've done in the past. Albeit I didn't use biscuits, I used like a spleen. So there we go, that's what it produces. I know we're rough sawn here, but I think we'll be alright. It's more for alignment. Yes, it offers some strength as far as kind of up and down, but it's more to help you keep everything aligned for your glue up, because the sheer surface area of board to board here is loads, and it's side grain, you know, it's all going to glue up fine, and that's why glue is the key here. I'm just using up some old stuff I got, but it is external. Drip all over the floor. That's what we like to see. It looks like it stayed nice and flat. Just use a wet rag. Do you know what? I know it's not the way it's done straight off a bandsaw, and it's probably not the best way because your surfaces aren't perfectly smooth, but I'm pretty impressed with the joint here. We do have the benefit that this is a rough board, loads of texture, so it's harder anywhere, but that is pretty, I mean, bearing in mind we haven't touched it with the sander yet, I'd struggle to find it myself. It's there. Right, I've just cut a couple more boards down to make the extra bits we need. So I'm going to show you how I've been prepping up these scaffold boards. There's no great science to it, and it's all down to what tools you got, what sanders you've got. You could just pressure wash the lot and wire brush them, and you could probably get a fairly decent look. But this is how I've been doing it. Right, this is how this batch came to me. I've cut this down a little bit oversized because I'm going to shorten it once we've jointed it. And you can see it's just a standard scaffold board, and as clean as this might look once you've given it a dust off, there is likely to be stuff really deeply ingrained in here, whether it's grit or metal or whatever. So you don't want to be throwing a bladed tool on here like a plane straight away, if at all. That's why we're going to sand it. So we'll give it a go over. I've got 80 grit in here to start with, which should be enough, and then we'll switch on to a random orbital. Probably is fine to declamp, but I'm not going to just yet because I don't need to until I run out of clamps, which is going to be soon. I can get 2 done. I've got enough clamps for 2, and then after that we can take them out. I hadn't realised quite how wide those biscuits are. I reckon if we come in 100mm from the end. Now we're using these outside, and I'm just not concerned because it's such a rustic piece of furniture, but supposedly you can get plastic ones of these. If you use the plastic ones, I guess you use some sort of PU glue. But anyway, I don't think these are going to harm. By the time they've got completely concealed in waterproof glue, and then the whole lot's being varnished anyway. Ah, you absolute squirrel. Family friendly show this. Right, we need one more. One more clamp. If we put these on, and there'll be a foot on the bottom. So if we put these on directly, because our boards, we haven't planed and thickness to our boards, they want to follow the contour of the wood. So they're going to send them out to the sides, or they might be sending them in. And we can correct that slightly because we're going to have a brace piece across here, albeit quite stubby and short, which will hold them parallel to each other. But then we're not going to be able to, we're never going to pull that bow or twist out of the wood. So the option is to do what I did on the table, which is to install a little brace across and then mount them to that. Let's move this little urchin out of the way. Right, the difference between the benches and the table was made up of 8 individual scaffold boards, which I left a gap between, like I think it was a 9mm spacer I used, so rain hits, it goes down just like a picnic table. With the benches, I'm not going to do that because the likelihood of them being perfectly level on top and the rain sitting on them is, you know, they're going to be varnished, and I think that it just would be odd to have the gap, especially because it wouldn't be on the centre. But it's probably not worth pre-drilling all these. Hopefully they're not going to clash with where we want our leg fixings to go. So we go, that's a solid bench, that. Still got to sand it, we've still got to cut the ends, and still got to put our feet on. But let's get 4 of those to that point, and then we can move on to the next stage. Right, so we need 8 of these per bench, but we'll start off with the 4 we need for the attaching it to the bench. Right, the beauty of water-based varnish is that it's dry within seconds, especially in this weather. So, although it's not fully cured, it's probably okay to put on there. I'm going to give them rub down again on the top and another coat or 2. Right, what I've just done is I've cut the cross beam or cross pole bits and put 2 of these junctions on, which are kind of like short T pieces. You slide over, tighten them up, so everything's adjustable. But I'm going to use this now as our template sort of brace that I know will hold our 2 feet of the same distance apart on our bench. By putting this in, I can line everything up. Let me just explain the setup for cutting. I mean, you could cut these with an angle grinder or even a hacksaw. This is not a metal cutting saw as much as it's advertised as it. That said, I've used it for endless stuff for this last project, much of which should be in the other video. Cutting angle and tubing and rod. And for these poles, it's just, I can't think of anything quicker at least. Yes, it is a bit of a mess maker because it's not like a wet saw or a band saw even, which might be a bit better, but providing you can tidy up afterwards. I've kind of got a sack behind catching most of it. You don't want to use a dust extractor, or not a bag at least, and it's kind of a completely different field from woodworking, so you don't want to mix the two, otherwise you can get a little bit smoky. But yeah, that's what I've got. Little sub block that end, simple as that. So I'm just butting it in. Now, when I was doing all the cutting of all the lengths, I had a sleeved shirt on and boots, and it was a little bit more refined, but I've only got 8 of these to cut, maybe 16 over the course of all the benches. So by clamping it in, I can actually stand back a little bit further and it's a bit safer. Now with the table, I took a flat disc wheel and sand and kind of ground all these smooth. To be quite honest, once those fittings are on there, they're completely concealed. There's no danger of anything getting caught, and it's not a really bad finish on there anyway. Well, there we go, another project done. I really enjoyed building these, simply because of the simplicity of them. That said, we left ourselves about 2 hours to build them the first time round, and then I had to go back in and re-engineer things after the photo shoot. For those of you who are not in the know, we built this fire pit barbecue system, and that was a collaboration for another channel, so I had to kind of get everything together for one deadline. But now I've kind of adjusted the legs, I've made the benches a little bit wider, everything just feels a little bit more solid. Originally it was snug under this limestone rim around the outside, but it was just, it was too risky that as these were being pulled out, that it was going to basically lever these slabs off or crack them. So I've gone about 20mm under, and I think that's fine. It just leaves a bit of a shadow gap there. And the idea is that nothing's going to fall or be pushed into the grill off the table. That's why I wanted the lip there. It's just a bit safer for the kids. That's why we've got this distance. So although we're going to encourage them to be able to cook their own food on there, it's far enough away to not be a risk. Had I not been in quite such a hurry, I might have looked at a different finish, an oil type finish that would soak in. But that's the sort of thing you have to build up over several coats, and I just didn't have that time. So this is a water-based clear varnish, and we'll probably put another couple of coats on here, and it's got a really nice wipeable finish, which is all we really need. We started out you may have seen with the kind of orangey brown colour, but we decided we actually quite like this pale bleached wood look, which is just the bare scaffold boards, and that's why we went with the clear water-based varnish. Plus it dries in about 10 minutes and we're super impatient. Another huge benefit is everything's adjustable. Nothing is drilled or welded. So just with a simple Allen key, we can adjust bits and bobs. And if you need to, if you had a sloping patio or something, you just want to level things up, a little bit like these tables, we want to be completely flat as they join, then you can just raise and lower and lock them off. It didn't even occur to me to think at the time that I can just keep an Allen key on a key ring hanging on that tree. And if we want to move these, whether it's at the end of the summer or just one evening, we want to pack them away so we can sit around the fire pit, and we want, you know, a compact storage rather than just leaving them whole. It's just a case of 4 of those little grub screws, the whole lot would lift off and the legs would be carried separate. It's much lighter to carry around that way as well. Not sure quite what it all totaled in cost. There's a few bits left over, and of course this is more connections and more poles than you would have conventionally. You probably have one table and a couple of benches, whereas this is double that. These T connectors and these bases work at about £3 each, and I think the poles themselves were maybe £5 a metre, that sort of ballpark. Delivery was done on weight, but these connectors are free delivery, certainly from the place I used, if you spent over £100. And you could pick up the poles locally. Our steel merchants down the road sell that. So there's a few options there. You can go much thinner with this. These are quite chunky and therefore quite weighty. You can get a 37mm, which is a little bit skinnier, and I think they even go smaller than that. The only difference is your base plate, which is actually a wall plate if you're buying it, that becomes a little bit narrower as well, so you've got less of a footprint on the floor. That's why I quite like these fat, wide ones. They give a good 110mm or something per foot on each, so it's not dissimilar from having a 4-inch leg on each corner. Now, would I put it in my house? Probably not this house at least. If I went for a really industrial look, then yes, it would probably fit. There's just something about it which I think is a little bit more suited to outside. You can, if you spend a bit more time planing these, jointing them well, and you know, so you haven't got the gaps like you would if you were doing an outdoor table, you can get a decent farmhouse table look. My parents have got something similar, and it looks the part. Scaffold boards work out on a complete average about £1 a foot. These were a little bit less because I took a whole bunch of them, and they will vary in degrees of usability, because some will be absolutely hacked. You know, like the bottom of some of these benches were. That look is quite cool, but if you want it for hygiene and food for a table, then you're going to want to pick through them. I am going to experiment with this in a future video, and once they're clean and completely grit free, and perhaps with an old set of knives in the thicknesser, really take these back to the virgin wood inside. So get rid of all the marks and all the dinks in them. And I think I'll be quite surprised at how decent this timber is. It's aged, it's dry, it's fairly stable, and do you know what? I think it could be quite decent wood for other joinery, for shelves and things like that, where you don't want the rustic look, but you just want some cheap, affordable, but decent, strong timber, and you'd still end up with probably a 25mm, 30mm board by the time you've taken a good few millimetres off each side. Anyway, there we go. That is our scaffold board furniture build. Let me know what you think. Do you like the look? Do you hate the look? I think it's super simple, it's super practical, and I can't think of many methods that would allow you to build a 6-piece set of furniture in what took us a day, and a day plus 2 hours. Of course, if you're going to use it inside, you'll want some felt pads under those feet as well, because they're not going to be that kind on your nice oak parquet flooring. And you can check out these 2 videos where I will link to our fire pit build, and also the rest of this garden transformation, this waste corner which we've turned into this little barbecue paradise. Thank you for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.